You're listening to the Business Essentials Daily Summer Series, the best episodes of 2020. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars. SoundCartel. The quarantine period might have inspired some reflection on how you've been working and changes you'd like to make to those old practices. But if you still feel like the wheels keep spinning, you're working harder, not faster, like you're in operational quicksand and want to stop making the same mistakes, well, here's some advice to get off the hamster wheel for good. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. We all want to run successful, profitable, and enjoyable businesses. But are we putting up barriers to growth simply because we're following principles and practices that really act against us? High-performance coach Alan Rodway has noticed some common mistakes which business operators make and keep on making. There's quite a list, and if you're guilty of any of them, you'll hopefully discover a wake-up call in the midst of his advice. Heather Dawson starts with mistake number 1. Key decision makers in private businesses work hard, but they don't think hard.
Correct, Heather. They spend a lot of their time working, and have you ever heard a business person in a key role say, "I'm not busy"? Because I haven't. They say it all the time, and they could certainly put their hands up and say, "We work hard," but too few of them can put their hands up and say, "We think hard." They tend to sort of structure that into brainstorming sessions or conferences or something like that, and that, to my mind, doesn't really work. So it's a little bit like sort of working on the business rather than in it, but that cliche hasn't got us very far. We still see too many people just spending their time in the operational quicksand, which sort of pushes them under rather than taking the business forward.
So you'd like to see them take a bit more time out, perhaps, and just really think?
Yeah, they actually have to. And they have to be in a creative mindset and in a creative space, not just in a creative meeting. It's actually different. Getting your brain into a place where it's consistently thinking about how to improve the business and its approaches is very different to just having an agenda in a meeting.
Okay, well, we'll keep going because there are lots more mistakes to talk about. The second mistake that businesses keep making, they're still too influenced by older guys.
How offensive is that? Isn't that a shocking thing to say?
Yeah.
And I'm an older guy, so it's actually not that offensive. Yeah, it is. If you look around Australia, the privately owned businesses are highly dominated in decision-making by guys like me over the age of 45. Now, is that bad? It actually is, because we tend to think differently to what, say, a female would, to what a younger person would, to what someone from even outside of business would. So it's really about time that we stop talking about it as being something that's politically correct to introduce more females into the thinking or more younger people. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about completely different approaches and different thinking styles and new ideas. If you take a step back and say, if you really wanted to be creative and improve things, would you just go to a bunch of guys over 50? Why would you do that? Now, we keep doing it accidentally because we don't think enough about it and say, well, who's making most of the decision? Guys over 50, why keep doing that? That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, another common mistake for business operators is poor choice of people, and you say it's not just staff you're talking about, it's equity partners too.
I think, look, the amount of strife in Australian private business that has been caused and is currently the situation where equity partners have made poor choices to go into an equity arrangement together is astronomical. And the consequences of that are not only financial, they are highly personal for the equity partners themselves, for people working around them, and for the families of the equity partners. And people listening to this, unfortunately, there will be way too many of them who will have a very quick reaction, "That's me." And if you go back and say, well, what was the selection process you used to make a decision to get into an equity arrangement with someone, it may just have been flawed. So the reason for making this point is to say, be very, very, very choosy who you get into an equity arrangement with, because whilst you can put into a shareholders agreement, you can undo it. That's actually easier said than done.
Right. And then if you do make a poor choice, a mistake commonly made is not getting rid of that poor choice quickly enough.
Absolutely. The main reason why we don't get rid of the wrong people, and that sounds a horrible thing to say, but it isn't. I mean, sometimes the wrong person in the wrong role or the wrong business is much better off out of there than remaining there. So we sort of have this starting point that says, oh boy, that's a really awful thing to do to someone, to move them out of the organisation or out of the role. It's actually not. They may well not be happy through poor performance, or they're not just quite fitting in or whatever. But other reasons are like, loyalty, the person's been around a while, or they're a nice person, or even worse, let's give them more time. And without being facetious about it, you say, well, how long have they been here? And you'll often get the answer, they've been here 3 or 4 years. So you think that they're going to change after 3 or 4 years if you just sort of hang in there for another few months. The chances are highly likely to be no. We need to be a little more courageous than that. We don't have to be politically incorrect, and we don't have to be illegal about it. It can be done with integrity to have the right people in the right roles, and that means getting rid of some.
Okay. Now, a big mistake in your list, I think, is not looking for new business opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that's more important now than it ever has been. I don't think that too many people really should start a business, open up a cafe or start up an online business or start some other venture and think that that's it. I think today it's not just missing out on opportunities to not look beyond that. I actually think it's silly because the coming and going of businesses today is faster and more widespread than ever. So really, I think business is not just about open, run and be successful in one business, maybe even two. I think it's got to go way beyond that now. You've got to be consistently looking at what other business opportunities are there, and that then demands, do you have the necessary ability to transfer your skills to run a business into some other venture? And I think that's a fantastic demand and a really good question. Are you still growing your business management and business entrepreneurial skills to enable you to be able to do that and seek those opportunities out?
Okay. Now, sticking to old-style marketing methods, another common mistake, rather than appreciating digital marketing.
Yeah, and boy, has that changed. Yeah, like marketing's a whole new world. In fact, I'm not sure anyone really knows what marketing is anymore. I think it's split into so many different segments now, and you can talk about digital marketing. And most people you walk up to on the street and say, what's digital marketing? They won't know what the answer is, but if you walked up to them 10 years ago and said, what's marketing? They could tell you it's branding, it's advertising, that sort of thing. But digital marketing, what's that? You say social media, and you get anything from, that's the teenagers on Facebook through to a massive marketing opportunity through Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, those sorts of things. So even the definition of it has become so broad now, and the landscape is changing so much. Businesses have been caught out, particularly in the privately owned space, and that's really the sad part, because the corporates have got the resources to keep up with this. But if you're owning and running a business and you're really, really busy, keeping up with what's going on in marketing is nigh on impossible. So what do they do about it? And there's so many of them. They're just sitting around out there going, I've got a website. And you say, well, is it effective? The answer is they don't know. You say, well, what's SEO? And they sort of know what SEO is. And, if you Google AdWords and Google Analytics, and what are you doing about that? And you've got the code on your website to track where some of these leads are coming from. Maybe they're coming from Facebook. It's a different language to people. So what it's doing is it's leaving these businesses to use forms of marketing that are nowhere near effective anymore because they don't know what they don't know.
Okay, now putting infrastructure and resources ahead of getting revenue, Alan, what are you saying here?
That's probably a bias of mine here, though, that businesses think that they've got two choices. You can put the infrastructure and resources in first and say, well, we've got the physical equipment to do it, we've got the people to do it, we've put our processes in place, we can produce the product and the services when the demand comes. And there is absolute logic in that. And then the revenue comes and away you go. The problem with it is you've got very hefty costs up front without revenue coming in, so you've automatically created a cash flow problem. Now, my bias is not to do that. Listeners may well disagree with me here, and that's fine. The alternative is to go chase the revenue and get it and worry about how you supply to the market afterwards. Now, we'll declare that as being my bias. Perfect world is grow the resource base to produce the product and service at the same rate that you are taking on customers, clients and growing your revenue. Now, that's lovely in a theoretical world. The reality is it's very, very difficult to do it. So I think businesses have got a choice. Do you put the resources in first and cop the cash implication of that and chase the revenue almost secondarily, knowing that you'll be able to supply to the market effectively and efficiently? Or do you chase the revenue first and withhold some of the resourcing so that your cash flow is all right? My personal bias, I will always go to the riskier side and say get the revenue first. I don't see any point in putting a resource base in and having a cash hit and then maybe having the revenue after it.
Right, now you've highlighted a few mistakes when it comes to customers, Alan. One is charging too little for what you give them.
Yeah. Years ago I met with a very astute business coach many years ago, and the person said to me, Alan, you charge too little for what you do. And I found that an interesting comment, and the person said that he thought that I should double my price per se. And my response to that was, if I do that, I'll lose half my clients. He looked at me and grinned, and instantly I realised mathematically what I just said. What it meant was I would have half the workflow and exactly the same revenue. If you do the numbers on that, that made enormous sense to me, so I actually did go about that. The reality was I didn't lose half my clients. The fact was I was undercharging. So many businesses say we are so busy. Read, we are too busy. Owners are working ridiculous hours, highly stressed, worried about how they're going to get through all the work, falling behind with deadlines, trying to find staff to keep up and so on and so on. All of that is such a pointer to you are too cheap. You've got so much work, you've got so many products that you're selling into the marketplace. That's why you're so busy. Increase your price. Increase your price. And what will happen, and this happens 99% of the time, if you increase your price by 10%, you will not lose 10% of your clients. It doesn't happen. You might lose 2%. By definition, your revenue goes up, your resourcing demands go down, proportionately your profit goes up and your cash flow is much better off.
Okay. There are many mistakes, more that we could discuss, Alan, but we're going to run out of time. So I'm going to go to one that is really sad, I think, is finally getting good ideas but never implementing them.
Yeah, FTI, failure to implement. It is one of the worst. I'll guarantee that some people hearing this have been through an experience in their life where one day they've noticed something that's become really successful in business and thought, I thought of that some years ago. And sometimes it's because as a consumer you've become frustrated because the product's not available to you and you think it should be, or the way it's been available, or how it's been priced, or something, or some approach in the community is not the way you think it should be. And you think for a while and you think, boy, I don't think it exists, and it should. And you don't do anything. And then 5 years later, it's a significant business and you look back and you go, boy, I could have done that. So not only do privately owned businesses not come up with enough ideas, but when they get them, they either lack the courage or they don't create the time to actually take it on and have a go. It would be a fact that for every 100 ideas that are tried for business, a very small proportion of them are successful. I get that. Absolutely get that, and you have to get that to be successful in your creativity. But go there and have a go, and when you get to that idea that does work, that's where the money is and that's where the fun is.
That was high-performance coach Alan Rodway. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.